Hello and welcome to Bunto's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds Hangout. I'm here with our five fantastic guests, Aishus, Jeff Killer, Lucia Pyong, and Mr. Tom Leeds. Tonight's subject, we're going to be talking about climate change. And we're going to start off with Jeff Keller's opinion, but first I'd like to bring to Jeff's attention the news headline of last week that last year was the hottest year ever recorded by scientists.
Hmm.
Your opinion of their consensus that our climate is heating up, Jeff?
No, I have no particular dispute with scientific evidence. It may well have been more hot last year than it may have ever been. There may well be
Recorded.
Yes, there may well be a historical trend towards heating. I don't know why they changed the movement to climate change rather than global warming, if that is the case. But no, I don't dispute that. The only thing about the movement itself that troubles me is not that whether or not the climate is getting warmer or not, but that there's this whole bundle of various different claims that we have to accept. We have to accept all of them, not just whether or not the climate happens to be getting warmer or not, and it either would be getting. It seems less likely that it's stagnant than anything, so it's either getting warmer or colder than being stagnant. But if it's and of course it depends upon where you're drawing the trend line. So if you're drawing it from the last ice age, for example, of course it's getting warmer. So you can draw a trend line from any number of years. If you do that in recent times, my understanding is in the last 20 or so years that it actually has been pretty even or even dropped a little bit in terms of how that goes. So,
okay.
But my point with the global warming argument is not whether or not that's happening. Of course, that's an empirical question. But we have to accept a number of claims. So it's not just that the climate may be warming, but is the cause man-made? I don't know that the data actually supports that entirely. Is it also the case that that's necessarily a really bad thing? We had global warming in the around 900 or 1000 AD, as I understand it, and it really didn't seem to be such a bad thing. It was a time of agricultural abundance and so on. So is it really a bad thing? The other thing that's bundled into the global warming debate is can we do anything about it? So if we were to deindustrialize ourselves, which would come at an enormous cost in terms of our ability to live, and we're not really geared to the cold. We don't have most of human civilization, I think, actually emerged in the very tropical areas. So the fact that we live in the cold really has to do with our ability to adapt to it, and we've used fossil fuels to do that. So would we be better off with less global warming? That's really debatable. So you have all these really, it's all a bundled up thing, and it's like you have to kind of accept all of these premises, and if not, you're a denier, which of course has all this crackpot association to it. So I think the movement itself needs to do a lot of work, and I'm not sure it's such a terrible thing if there is global warming. I'm not sure that we could do anything about it if we wanted to, or that we should. Yeah. So
very good, Jeff. Jeff, if it was ascertained that the cause was man-made, should we, as one of the inhabitants of this planet, have an obligation to cease our heating up of it? Like you say, you said
it
there
depends.
could be.
It depends on whether it's a good or bad thing for mankind. So if it's not such a bad thing, there was. I'm pretty old, as you can probably tell by looking at me. And when I was a kid, there was a great deal of concern about a coming ice age, and people were even postulating whether or not there was something we could do about it. So if there was an ice age that was coming upon us, and we decided that that was totally bad for the planet. Should human beings do stuff? There was even some written in some corners that fossil fuels may be a great way to offset that harmful thing. So no, I think that human beings in nature, we're one of the only species that can actually transform nature to a large extent. So
Apparently.
if global warming is good for human beings, we probably don't want to do anything against that. And um, if it's not global warming, we probably would be better off.
If it is only
Not in-
good for human beings, is that your position?
um, yeah, I think human beings are unique, pretty unique in the animal kingdom.
That
As
we dominate this planet?
we can actually transform nature, and we do so all the time. We live in very cold climates, and we have heat. We do any number of through any number of ways. We transport. We sort of conquer nature in many ways. We conquer it by obeying it. We don't just. But we can fly around. We can do all these things. So I'm not opposed to. I wouldn't be opposed to affects if it affects human life positively to have and if human beings could ever do it, that they could control the climate to their own.
Well, you said something
I wouldn't have any problem with that.
that if it was ascertained that it was man-made, as long as it did not affect humans, you were still good to go.
Well, if it was man-made and it was a good thing, it was a happy consequence of our industrialization, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Okay, who says that it is a happy consequence of our industrialization?
Well,
I believe it's the oil company, right?
I added happy to the consequence, but if we're better off living as
Have
human beings,
scientists said it's a happy consequence, man-made warming?
well, I don't think it's up to scientists to put to make a value judgment. So I would hope that scientists would just either say that what cause and
Have
effect.
scientists ever said it's beneficial for mankind for us to heat ourselves up with greenhouse gases?
Yeah.
I don't know that they've said that specifically, but I think historically we have benefited from warmer climates and having more agrarian societies. And the question about the greenhouse about global warming is if the climate warms, are we going to have all these catastrophic things that are going to happen? Certainly some things would change, but is it such that we wouldn't be able to adapt to it or whatever? So,
the ocean rises, the polar ice caps melt.
Yeah, see,
our
that's another
coastal
thing.
cities
Right.
get
Basically,
inundated.
if 90% of the species were to die off, that would be fine. As long as
that wouldn't be fine. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying
that's
that
the move from the
that's,
theme of climate change to climate change from global warming has basically been to dissuade those who make the argument, oh, it's cold here, so where's your global warming? But the climate change argument is
right. I understand that. That's
destruction.
climate is about long-term trends. It's not about it snowed today, therefore there's
There's a disruption in the whole global climate system that is adversely affecting everywhere. And just because more industrialized people are able to adapt much easier to it because we have the technological ability to adapt to it, there's every species on the planet is being negatively impacted, and every non-technologically advanced person is being negatively impacted.
Well, I think that makes an argument that to be technologically advanced is a better thing than to not be technologically advanced. So
a happy coincidence is, like going out west with your disease-ridden blankets and giving it to the natives. What a happy coincidence that it, got rid of all the natives that you didn't want to be there in the first place.
I'm with your disease-ridden. Are you talking about what are you talking about?
Well, when you say a happy coincidence, that if the planet gets warmer, it works out well for us humans who would prefer to be warmer, is It's like saying
Well,
it's a happy coincidence that all these things that we didn't want to be here have died.
I'm not
this is
following.
what we know, Jeff. The majority of science say that climate change, global warming, is bad, right? The majority of scientists say
No,
that
I
is
don't. I
bad.
don't. I don't think that's entirely true. From what I've read, the majority of the scientific, official scientific community,
Consensus.
whatever that might be, agrees with one or more of the global warming premises, but not necessarily all of them. And that's my basic that's my basic critique is
Which
that
scientists?
people like myself will agree or accept maybe some part of it, but we don't necessarily accept all of it. That it's bad. That there's anything you can do about it. That we're going to have that's catastrophic. That it isn't actually a good thing for climate to be warmer.
There are plenty of scientists that say we can do something about it, and that is to reduce our use of fossil fuels, reduce putting CO2 emissions into our atmosphere.
Right, we can do something about it, but at what cost? And is
Okay,
the
so now it's cost.
well, yes, it is cost. So
It is
if
cost.
The
if
inconvenience to
right,
the
absolutely, it is cost. If you have if you can lower the surface temperature by 0.05 degrees, and at the same time deprive people of low cost heating, of low cost farming, and all this stuff, which will affect people, especially in the third world and the people that you might be most concerned about.
The
Then
people in the third world are the ones who most
we
be
absolutely
negatively
do
impacted.
we do absolutely
Please.
live in a cause and effect world. And if you can make these draconian cuts to the global economy and only have an almost negligible effect, then yes, that is a severe cost
Well,
at
what do you call
for a
draconian cuts?
minimal benefit, and that should be absolutely considered.
What do you
Okay,
call
go ahead,
draconian?
Tom.
If you really care about people and not just in the abstract, where um, you know, uh, if you're really paying more than lip service than caring about what
No,
happens to
okay.
people.
If
Scientists are paying lip service. Go ahead, Tom.
if the cost of reducing fossil fuels is to go freezing in the night in winter, that's one thing, but
Right.
that's not the case.
Well, it may be for some
There
people,
are
yes.
Please, Jeff.
alternatives to fossil fuels. It's just that we are too fat and lazy to make those alternatives because they're difficult. They're hard choices to make to go to, to go from
Solar, wind.
gasoline, from switching from gasoline to all of a sudden have to go to solar and electrical and
So
hydro, nuclear.
these are economically
These 10 different
viable.
things instead of the one simple, easy thing that we're so used to using. We're fat and happy using the same thing we've been using forever that we don't want to change because we're lazy and it's difficult and people don't like doing things that are difficult. And the companies that are making the most money, the oil companies, they are fighting tooth and nail to change, to keep from changing because they've got the infrastructure, they're making lots of money, they want to wring every penny out of oil.
So
before
they're
we
not
have to
they're
change.
not fat and lazy, right?
They are hugely fat and lazy.
Well, they on the one hand, it sounds like you're saying they're very aggressive and not fat and lazy, but you're characterizing, you're saying something that is really economically viable.
They're aggressive to keep being fat and lazy. They're very
So they're not fat. They're aggressive about the status quo, but they're fat and lazy about changing it. Is that what you're saying?
well, not so much lazy. They want to keep things
That was
the
your
way they
word.
are.
That's the way you characterize this.
They
So
want to keep things the way
that's
they
your economic analysis is that people
No, that's
are
not
somehow not too
my
fat and lazy
economic
to maintain
not
the
my
status
economic
quo.
I'm just saying that we need to change, but change is difficult, and people don't want to change. So we have oil companies that are fighting tooth and nail to keep things the way they are, rather
But
than
why can't if you have the technology to market something else, why can't you unfat and lazy concerned people do that in the marketplace rather than just sit around on your armchair and talk about how fat and lazy everybody else is? Why can't you actually put
Well,
something that's more viable out there and find investors? If it is, I'm sure you could be very successful if you know a better way to.
can't be.
Let's give you all that,
You
Jeff.
get the lobbyists, the oil lobbyists, who are working very hard at keeping things the way they are.
Mhm.
The infrastructure is set up to be the way that it is, and changing is difficult.
So
It's
you
like the
want a
big cars.
more you want a
Like
more
the
free
big
market.
SUVs. The
You want
auto companies kept telling everyone big SUVs are what Americans want. It's like, well, of course, that's because they've been having
the reason we have SUVs
This is what
is
you want.
because
This
of
is what you want. This is what you want.
we have SUVs because of government. The reason we have SUVs is because they had something called
Government?
the corporate average fuel economy,
Cafe.
and they said that cars could not have a certain mile per gallon, but trucks are exempt. So obviously, because of this misguided legislation, we ended up with more trucks. So my mom, when I was a kid, we had a station wagon, and now it's just a truck because that's how government works.
Well,
When you go to the government instead of going to the marketplace to solve people's problems, you
That's
end
fine,
up with
Jeff.
distortions like that.
okay, Jeff, let's kind of dovetail it back just to climate change, okay? Let's say we give you all that. Your point that it is, well, okay, let's say that the oil companies are our most dependable and reliable energy source. How's that? And you said it was cost, right? I said if it was ascertained that climate change was man-made as well as being detrimental to, our human life, all life on this planet, you said that cost is too prohibitive to do anything about it.
No, I'm just saying that if you think something is such a no-brainer that it's cost-free, I don't think oil companies. I think we would glom on to anything that was profitable, and if there was a more efficient way to heat the planet or to
Stop heating the planet.
or to stop heating the planet. I'm sorry, but to heat people's homes and all that stuff, or to provide fuel for transportation. I don't think the oil companies particularly care if it's oil. Now, they may be wedded to that, and if they are, that's a golden opportunity for other investors to get in with their new technologies that aren't as costly and aren't as environmentally detrimental. So that's basically how it works. And if the oil companies are very detrimental to the environment, that's a failure of government to defend.
Oh, that's a failure of government.
To protect the rights of protect property rights. So if the oil companies are pillaging other people's property and all of that, then that's a failure of government to protect their those resources.
When government acts to curtail the amount of CO2 emissions, isn't there a substantial pushback from the fossil fuel industry?
Yeah, but they also subsidize the fossil fuel industry. They also subsidize it by paying for their research and development, which they shouldn't do. I would agree with.
So we should go ahead. The first step is cut the subsidies to the fossil fuel market.
Yes, absolutely, of course.
And maybe perhaps use that money for searching for alternative fuel sources that aren't as damaging to this planet.
Well, that by cutting those resources, that would give an advantage to people who would be doing research in other fields. Absolutely, yeah.
Pyong, you have comments to add?
Well, my only thought while he was talking about this is if everything he's saying is right and true, then I think that's very reasonable. But what if he is, subject to the same sort of disinformation that we all are subject to, and he's merely responding in the way that is, sure, it's self-reliant, it's responsible, but it could be propaganda. It could be all fictional. I mean, to say that standards on fuel economy are limited because of government is not necessarily the whole story. So what if it's special interests who are shaping policy and they're chasing profit?
I would not dispute that. Well, we could always say in any debate, well, what if your information is so, we all read what we read and all of that, so I can only debate on what I read if I've been so hopelessly brainwashed, then of course my information is flawed, as would yours be. So let's assume that I'll assume that your information, what you read, is generally correct, or that you have the same availability to information as I do. So let's not go become arch skeptics where nobody knows anything. Doesn't make for a very interesting debate.
That's interesting you bring that up, because when you were talking, I didn't really think of arch skeptic. What I actually thought of, and please don't take offense to this, okay? It's not like I'm calling you Captain Climate Change Denier or saying that you hate black people and you want to swamp New Orleans. I'm just saying that, a lot of the same stuff sounds like conspiracy theory. Like, we just need more information. If we just need to do one more investigation to find out what they have in Roswell. That kind of thing. And here I'm just saying it's analogous to it. I don't know why you want to kill the children, Jeff. But I'm saying, you have legitimate climate change scientists who are really concerned with this stuff, and I'm not a professional. I'm not a climate change scientist, I know that you don't profess to be either, but the people who are really concerned with this stuff seem to be knowledgeable. You know what I'm saying? And so if they're putting together
I never said anything to the contrary. I actually would assume that most people who talk about this stuff are very concerned and with good reason. But I look foremost at incentives. Why are people concerned about things, and why is this the case? And it's really a cheap debate tactic to say, oh, you're a denier or anything of this. I acknowledge that there probably is some degree of global warming. I accept the science on that pretty much. I'm fine with that. It doesn't I don't have a stake in whether that's right or wrong, so I really don't care. But my concern is more with the conclusions that you draw from that. So okay, so let's say there is warming. Let's say it is man-made. The next question is, the next two questions is this really a bad thing? And if so, can we do anything about it? So if we can't do anything about it, what's the big deal? And does that make me a denier just because I don't think the remedies are sound? I don't think so. But we have this denier label and stuff like this that we use around this debate to fog it and to marginalize people who don't buy every plank of it 100%. And that to me is really unfair. And I think if you think about it, you would agree that just calling people denier, not because they dismiss the whole thing, but because on some points they don't think they're as solid as maybe some other points, that's kind of shady what you're doing. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I would never dream of doing that. I don't even.
I think you just did.
I said I would not call you Captain Climate Change Denier.
Is that an apology?
Nor would I call you.
I think you did.
I wouldn't think of saying that you were like Grand Dragon Keller because you want to swamp New Orleans. Listen, I am the president of the Jeff Keller Mail-In Fan Club. Okay, we're on the same team, but I do agree that the ideologies are very strong in it, and I think sometimes, people might take a position exclusively based on that ideology. And my concern is that they're just
that goes both ways. Yeah, that goes both ways. So some have said environmentalist. When you couldn't, it used to be socialism used to be a very intellectual position until we've had numerous cases in the world where socialism has just utterly collapsed and been found to be an utter failure. So some would say that environmentalist is a way to bash industrialism and capitalism without economic theory. It used to be the position, by the way, of socialists that you could have really abundant abundant production and all of that and wealth to everybody without capitalism. And when that didn't happen, the socialists kind of went back to the drawing board and said, well, maybe abundance and capitalism isn't such a good thing, so maybe we just need to trash industrialism. Hence, you have environmentalism, which is sort of green on the outside and red on the inside. That's kind of what that's kind of what what we've come to, and so that's totally ideologically suspect as well. So
well, yeah, but yeah, there is a lot of ideological inertia in there, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, in your own case, destroying the planet runs in your family. Apparently, your mom had a gas guzzler, and now you're driving one. Whatever. I mean, that's okay by me.
My mom drives a Honda Accord, and I drive a Hyundai Sonata. Hardly a gas guzzler. Plus, it's not just how many miles per gallon it is. I don't drive much, so I could have a 1976 Cadillac Fleetwood and with a 500 cubic inch V8. With the amount of miles that I drive, I would actually consume less fuel than you might in a Prius if you drive a lot. So it's not just about how much miles per gallon, but it's how much you drive. That's wasteful too.
Very good, Jeff.
Is that what kind of car you like? A Cadillac Fleetwood?
I'd love to have a '76 Eldorado convertible. Yeah, that would be.
Oh my, yeah, dude.
I did have a '69 Cadillac Eldorado, which I wish I still had, but
okay,
I
very
love
good.
that thing. But I
I
didn't drive it much. I drive it less than anybody here. But
very good, Jeff. Jeff, you said two logical questions followed your discovery that global warming is man-made and global warming is damaging the planet. No, okay, what would you say? It's first, is it bad for us?
Questions. Those are questions that I raised. They're not.
Yeah, two questions. Is it bad for us, and is there anything we can do about it, right? I believe that's what you said. Is it bad for us, and is there anything we can do about it?
Well,
and then
right.
You said it had to do with cost.
Sure.
Right? So cost is the penultimate overriding factor of us.
And I mean human cost. I'm not just talking dollars and cents. I'm talking.
Oh, I thought it was dollar and cents cost.
No. Do people die? Like if you make fossil fuels really expensive for people? No. I'm not talking about just their material wealth. I'm talking about, do they get heat? Do they get agriculture? Do they get any of these things? No. That's what I mean by cost. I don't mean it's simply in dollars and cents. No, that's not what I mean.
Now, as far as like the human cost, could it be alleviated by alternative energy sources? You know, nuclear.
If
wind,
those things are
solar.
really viable and cost effective, it could be. But we don't need the government to tell us what to do there. I mean, if it's cost effective, these greedy, lazy businessmen that you decry, they will certainly invest their money in those technologies.
Okay. Tom, did you want to add?
Well, I mean, to the two questions regarding is climate change man-made and can we do anything about it? Man-made is a relative term. Man is or the effects of man is basically the cover you put on the pot that's on the stove. It's getting hotter. It gets hot. But what we've done effectively is put a cover on it so it's getting hotter that much faster. Unfortunately, I think we're past the tipping point. I don't think we can do anything to stop the warming trend. The best we could probably hope for is to slow it down. But here's my argument, I guess, is what is the downside to reducing our consumptions? What is the downside of supporting technologies? Like right here, right now in the U.S., the price of gas has dropped dramatically. It's like almost half of what it was a couple of years ago.
That's a great thing.
Why is that a great thing? I think it'd be a great thing if they kept the price of gas the same and added $2 tax and put that $2 tax towards developing technologies that enabled us to get away from using gas. Because what's happening right now is the Middle East is lowering the price of oil to try to undercut all this, this dirty oil that we've been getting in an effort to not use the Middle East oil. So they're basically just lowering the price so we can help ourselves.
Oil production went up dramatically in the U.S. The shale oil production went up dramatically in the U.S., and that lowers the costs per gallon. Now, I would agree to you at one point, to the extent, and I said this earlier, we should not be subsidizing oil exploration, and no government should be doing that. But that aside, when the price of oil drops, when the price of anything drops, that means it's less scarce. Economics is really a war against scarcity, so and actually is a very effective war. So when the price of something goes up, it means it's more scarce and encourages people to conserve it. People drive less.
Less scarce. It is more scarce. They're working harder and harder. I mean, this whole thing with fracking is just proof that it's more scarce. But they've developed technologies that allow them to get to this hard to get to oil, and they're wringing the rag dry is what they're doing, and they want to keep us on oil any way possible. And they know if we have to spend $8 on a gallon of gas, we're going to look for other alternatives. But so they're working very hard to keep the price of gas cheap, and that does harm people. I mean, the effects of fracking are not only geologically harmful, but they're harmful to the environment and everyone around it. And it's the need for oil overrides common sense. The need for cheap gas overrides what's actually good for them. And we use these cheap oil fertilizers to get cheap food, and we have fat Americans that are sick because they're malnourished. They're fat and malnourished.
Okay, I think you're lumping a lot of things into the same category.
That's it is all lumped together. The entire world is an ecosystem.
Petroleum is
and gas.
Petroleum is not just in cars. It's in all of the consumer goods, including what we're talking on right now. Yeah,
it's destroying the environment and destroying our health, and we're fighting tooth and nail to keep it.
The environment is really cleaner in most Western states than it ever has. It has been since the Industrial Revolution. Environment was
well, yes, because they didn't. It's like if you fill your house full of shit, you're going to realize your house is full of shit, and you're going to figure out ways to have your house not full of shit. And that's what America did.
Well, okay.
Well, the government passed regulations.
But it's not just it's not just the government.
We have more toxic chemicals all around us nonstop, but the air is cleaner.
Well,
we've got landfills that are.
Well, one of the things that perpetuated pollution in the past was what I would hold as a free market principle is property rights. So if you have an apple orchard or whatever, and there's some factory next to you and they're putting soot and stuff and it's poisoning your apples, you would normally have a property rights claim against that factory and a legal basis to have them cease and desist, or if it's just your lungs, if they're polluting you and causing you injury. But unfortunately, what the government did is they decided that they would argue, they would consider these complaints on utilitarian basis, like even to the point of saying, well, the factory pays more taxes, so therefore it's more beneficial to society at large than your little orchard, so we're going to let them pollute. We're going to let them pollute this river. The rivers are commonly owned. They're not owned by private individuals, as I would argue they should be. So pollution is very much all of these tragedies of the common things have to do with non-owned property, whether it's the airways or it's the rivers or anything like that. So and these factories were allowed to dump stuff into the river because it was judges and all these people would decide, well, it's better for the community because they're paying more taxes or whatever, we should just let them do that and screw the individual property owner. which I think is very unfree market and very unlibertarian to do.
When did that happen, though, Jeff? I'm interested. I'm not calling you a liar, okay?
It's been a hallmark of jurisprudence since the 19th century.
I've never heard of something like that, bro. I've never heard of something like that.
Well, I mean, why are governments? Why, if you own property along the Ohio River which burned up, why couldn't you go to the government and say these people are harming my property? You couldn't do that. It was they would obviously favor the business. We needed this EPA and all this other nonsense to override that because the property rights were not being defended properly.
Right, but you specifically said that the courts would look at who paid more taxes and decide
or who provided more jobs, so they would make these utilitarian. They usually wouldn't frame it in the terms of taxes, but who provided more jobs, or they would use a utilitarian formulation as to on whether or not they should go after the company. Some of these things were protections were codified in law. So basically, if the government was supposed to protect people along the Cuyahoga River from their adjoining river not being going up into flames and destroying their property, you didn't really have any kind of legal recourse because they were basically making these decisions on utilitarian grounds. You couldn't defend your property even though this poison was being floating downstream to your land, and that just was the case. It's a prima facie case. That's why that happened.
Okay, but you don't have a specific. And I'm not trying to like I said.
I didn't know we were talking about this. I could probably come up with specific cases if you wanted to.
But, no, I'm just curious because there are some landmark cases out there that are big time, and I don't know if I had missed something or anything or something like that. So, but okay, go ahead.
Basically, government was a terrible steward of the land they.
Okay, before the EPA, were these factories still polluting the river?
Sure, and there's still factories that are still polluting rivers.
Well, they'll face a substantial government fine if they do so.
They get caught.
They get caught.
No,
you know what I mean? I mean, you're like telling us that the EPA has no use whatsoever. Isn't that what you're trying to say?
The EPA is pretty much it's just the government boondoggle. It's not really that. I mean, that's not what's needed. What's needed to protect private.
When you drink
what's needed
water
to protect
out of the
land
tap,
and resources is private ownership.
Is it clean water? The water you drink out of the tap, Jeff?
Not very clean. It depends where you live.
Clean enough to drink. That you
West Virginia.
I would recommend you drink bottled water.
But could you drink water out of the tap, Jeff, from your house and still survive?
In most areas, not in Charleston, West Virginia.
You can thank the EPA protections for that.
Well, the people in Charleston, West Virginia aren't very thankful to the EPA.
Why? Because a company polluted.
Well, the EPA was supposed
water.
to protect against that, and that didn't happen. And the EPA, I think, was even called in that case where the poisoning of the Elk River was occurring. So
you can drink. Okay, go ahead.
You're saying that a failure to stop a bad act is equally culpable to the bad act? I mean, it doesn't make much sense.
Actually,
but Jeff, then you could hold policemen culpable for homicide.
The EPA has since told those people it was okay to drink back from the river, but the people aren't even doing it. They don't trust the EPA, and with good reason.
Yeah, but the EPA aren't the one who poisoned the river, big guy.
That's correct. Neither did they have anything to do with. They were charged with protecting it, and they didn't do that either. So.
Well, okay.
So it's a wash.
They're not gonna. I don't think it's a wash actually, because here's your position, Jeff. You say, hey, if it was a company, they could regulate themselves. If it's a government agency.
No, I didn't say that.
Regulatory agency. Well, hold on. Yeah, but that's that.
I didn't say that. No.
I didn't say you said that. No. But you're saying privatize the rivers, right? So you're saying essentially that if it's a private entity, they'll be able to regulate more successfully than a regulatory agency of the government.
And the owners of the river would be culpable to whomever they poisoned along the path of the river.
But don't you recognize that big firms have the ability to shape domestic policy such that they could be more susceptible to corruption than government regulatory agencies?
Yes, and they buy government power. That's what they do. So these corrupt firms buy power in the government, and it's at the expense of the local people. So if you're for the little guy, you don't want to have a big government that's for sale. You just want to have a basic protection against individual property rights. That takes care of itself. So if it,
well, okay, but the little guy isn't fucking around with the worst shit. You know, I mean, the guys who are really messing around with the nasty stuff, the nuclear waste and stuff, they're never a mom and pop shop. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar businesses, at least, or business entities, that are usually involved in massive trade organizations that are representing their businesses. They're the ones who are most able to shape policy, and they're the ones who are most likely to pollute.
That's why they were able to get away with poisoning the Elk River in West Virginia.
Okay, so then why do you think that corporations would regulate themselves better than I'm not saying that it would be completely unbiased, but a government regulatory agency at least doesn't have the profit motive involved.
I'm sure they have a lot of motivation to please their supporters and stuff like that, and people who donate to them.
Please their
they're not exempt from. They're not saints just because they work for the government. In fact, a lot of them work there because they get
But it's the
really
corporation that is
pensions
donating.
and. I'm sorry.
It is the corporations that are their donors, Jeff. It's not the little guy.
Right, they're on the payroll. So why would you want them protecting?
Yeah, but can't you see if the ones all we would do by the libertarian method would be cutting out the middleman of government. You see, they wouldn't have to donate.
Right. Dispute resolution would be.
Well,
private.
there would be no dispute resolution. They could pollute the river as much as they want. They would just have nobody inhibiting.
You seem not to be very steeped in libertarian literature, so that's not exactly how things would happen. But dispute resolution would be private. The rivers would be privately owned, and you would be responsible if you polluted or violated the property rights of other people along the stream of that river.
If the polluting company is watchdogging themselves, Jeff, if the polluters are being their own policemen, they won't cease polluting. That's why we have an EPA.
And they don't under the EPA.
Oh, yes. That's why you can drink water out of a tap, Jeff, and not keel over, because the EPA passed the Clean Water Act.
It depends. I mean, we've all had water advisories. I don't know where you live, but they don't always do such a great job of guarding the water. I think it's advisable to drink bottled water, frankly.
Tom, any comment?
I agree. The EPA is kind of toothless. I mean, they are. I don't want to say completely ineffective. Historically, they've done a lot of things that have improved living conditions in this country, but most of what they do is kind of a failure. Yeah. I mean, they kowtow to lobbyists, and they kowtow to. I mean. How often has the person in charge of the EPA have been a former, oil executive?
Exactly.
Who's he looking out for?
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a huge revolving door problem. But I'm saying that wouldn't you think, just like kind of like Bunto characterized, you're essentially cutting out the middleman. Don't you think that's the potential for corruption is larger though, Jeff? I mean, if you really did, maybe it's a difference in the way that we perceive things.
No, if you.
I know that a lot of folks who are honest and righteous in their business endeavors, they produce a good product, they produce a valuable service, and that's how they make money. I'm also aware that a lot of people just rig the fucking game, Jeff. They just change the rules to their favor.
Yeah, and what better way to do that than by hiring government officials, where you can do it in a consequence-free environment. You can be a Halliburton. You can be.
Who's going to regulate? Yeah, but okay. So say you do it in a private way. Who's going to regulate that?
Who's regulating it now? Nobody. So you have Halliburtons. You have Too Big to Fail. You have General Motors that should have gone bankrupt back in the 70s. You're comparing that to you're comparing the libertarian ideal to perfection, but you're comparing everything else to just the way it is now.
No,
And you're saying just because they say it's about cleaning up the environment that's what they do, but intentions are not results are way more important than intentions. And so yes, if we call something the Environmental Protection Agency and we just look at the title of the agency and say, well, are you against environmental protection? Obviously you would say no, but that's not what actually happens.
Okay, I'm not
actually a
comparing
pretty good-
libertarian ideals. I mean, I like libertarian ideals. I think they're fantastic.
Oh, I can tell you love them.
I wish we lived in a world where they were applicable.
Yes.
But what?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. What
So
I'm
you like them,
specifically
but
hold on.
why do you like them
hold
then
on,
if they're not applicable?
Hold on, deliciousness. Okay.
Oh my God, help me, man.
Listen.
But why do you like them if they're not? I'm just curious. Why do you like them if they're not applicable? What is your appeal?
Well, they're just like you say yourself. They're ideals. I mean, but before I say that, what I'm specifically comparing is private ownership or the regulation or the control, the stewardship, if you will, of a river. And you're saying that private control is better. So I'm comparing that with yeah, it's a government regulatory agency, and I'm asking you if you don't see that a private, even a private interest that is charged with stewardship over a river could potentially also be equally, if not more, corrupt. Because at least, I mean, you can talk about the EPA is ineffective and all that stuff is great, and I'll laugh about it with you because I personally think so as well. But at least they're not subject to the profit motive, and there's a chance that somebody's going to be in the EPA and do the right thing. And you know what? I think there are a lot of folks.
There's a chance. Well, what's the chance of that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't say.
Well, I mean, why couldn't I say, well, there's a chance that there's a free market and they'll want to sell products. Let's say they're a manufacturing firm and they don't want to have a reputation for destroying the livelihood and lifestyle of all the people in the wake of the river that they own, which they wouldn't necessarily own the whole river. They would probably own a piece of it. And why would they not? Why wouldn't there be some people there that would have a conscience too?
Absolutely possible.
But I
see,
don't.
I haven't
but
expressed
I
a
think,
particular
I
preference.
honestly think any system that depends on good people always running it is a bad system, and I think that's the story of the EPA and the government control of resources. Whereas if you had a system of property ownership where the people who own it would be really responsible for it, and where people would have actionable claims against their own lands if they're downstream from that river being polluted and stuff like that, that would actually be a much greater incentive than turning it over to the political system where those with the greatest political pull get their way and do so on utilitarian grounds or whatever the rationale is for it. So I think that's a fantasy, frankly, and that's going to ever work out. It hasn't in the past, and I don't think it ever will. So.
Well, but but what I've heard from you is that you always prefer the private ownership of the river.
Yes, Tragedy of the Commons is a well-known economic and environmental problem where if nobody owns a resource,
I asked you for an example and you weren't able to give me one. So I mean I don't know how widespread it is, but I'll tell you this, Jeff. Okay, you know I like you. I think you're great, and I'll agree with you on one point. If you could eliminate the ability of special interests to shape policy in their favor, to create loopholes that you can drive a truck through, and that that is driven by profit, then I would agree with you. I would say, yeah, put them in charge, rely on property rights. Okay, you can probably do that.
Actually, if you could do that, I would agree with you on a federal EPA. But you can't do that. You can't do that with the EPA. That's the problem in the political system is special interests. But if you have an objective system of dispute resolution that is where people are held accountable in the marketplace, then that would go far more towards that. But you're saying
I'm not necessarily talking about a regulatory agency. For example, we talked before about limiting liability in tort cases. Remember that? That was the legislature. That had nothing to do with the regulatory agency. So say I'm ComEd. Fuck your river. Okay? I'm going to dump some PCBs in there, eat shit. I'm going to pass some legislation that says, you know what? Your total recovery from me is going to be $250,000. It's capped. That's what I'm referring to. I'm not talking about
Well,
putting
that
in
happens.
charge. Right.
That's
If you
that's
could,
your system. That's the government system.
that's
Yeah,
my system.
that's your system. Yes. So
Well, what
I
I'm
agree.
saying is,
I agree with your critique.
what I'm saying is, if you could eliminate that type of thing, then I could go along with what you're saying. But how are you going to eliminate that?
By not having the government, it's not
Well,
eliminated now.
this is what I find is really kind of specious about your argument, Jeff. Jeff, okay, what we have now. Okay, Jeff, let me try it this way. Less government is better in your mind, right? If we could get rid of those regulations, we would be better, right? Get rid of the regulating agency, we'd be better off, right?
Yes, and just have basic property rights,
Right.
basic rules about property rights and self-ownership.
Well, if you've noticed, our legislation has been going that way to completely defang the EPA.
Are you crazy? No, our
And
have been going so far
supply.
away from that. No.
Oh, really? The EPA is throwing its weight around and preventing these people from polluting.
Yeah, property
You
rights.
just admitted that they weren't doing their job. They weren't doing any oversight, right? With the West Virginia case.
Oh yes, but
Okay,
that's not because we've had more property rights and people.
Well, it's not
people are held
necessarily
accountable.
property
No,
rights, Jeff.
no.
What I'm demonstrating is that the type of mindset we have now, they have been taking steps ever since the Bush administration to completely destroy the effectiveness of the APA. Would you agree? Since Bush, they've been taking steps to reduce the effectiveness of that government agency.
I don't know what example. What would you cite as?
Well, I mean, I guess we could look at who they're hiring for their boss, and the oversight problems that they're having, and as far as their, what would you say? I mean, would you not see all the trouble that fracking has developed? That there would be somebody standing in the way of stopping the amount of fracking that's been going on. I look at stories in West Texas where the people can't drink their water. I mean, you can look at that example of the EPA not doing its job in protecting
well,
the
let's say
body
that's
of
true.
people.
Then why would this be a good system where it would be?
I'll give you that.
Why would it be subject to whoever is in office as to whether or not they?
I'll give you that.
They hire somebody that would run it to your expectations. Why would that be?
What
a good
is happening is the libertarian ideal of completely reducing government's effectiveness.
Well, there's still an EPA.
Completely.
They haven't closed the.
Yes, but it's completely crippled. Is it not?
I don't know. Has their budget been cut?
I'm sure their budget has been cut.
By how much?
I'm not sure, but
I'll bet you would find that. No, I'll bet you would find that their budget has not been cut by a penny.
Since the Bush years, Jeff, for sure it's been cut.
How much? By how much?
I don't know, but I know for a fact that Bush took pains to limit all the regulatory agencies that were in the way of big oil.
Okay.
That was one of them, EPA. Now, anyway, what I'm trying to say, Jeff, is that you may say that this agency is the root of the problem, right?
I didn't say that. I just.
Well, you're saying that if it was doing its job, we wouldn't be even having this conversation, right?
No, we would just have a no. If government were doing its just role.
No, the EPA.
Well, no. If government in general were just doing its just role, it would be about protecting the rights of property owners against their property being damaged. So if fracking damages people's property, or if it results in people's water being contaminated, that's something that there's already laws for. And if government's not enforcing them, it doesn't mean we need some new government boondoggle or some agency or anything of the kind. That's the kind of thing that should be resolved in a court.
But you see, it's sort of like
being resolved in a court. Then either the courts are not functioning properly.
Oh, I understand. I'll give you the mechanism. But Jeff, you see, it's sort of like this: cutting off somebody's legs, and then blaming them that they can't run marathons.
Hmm.
See what I
What?
mean? It's like
What?
it is a
I,
crippled government agency
yeah.
done by libertarian and Tea Party type politicians. Have
No,
crippled
it's crippled because government
government
agencies
regulation.
are crippled to begin with. They don't act on your self-interest. Really? Do you think they do? I mean, I don't even think you've been claiming that. You've
Before
been
the
talking
Bush
about
years. Okay, go ahead.
before the Bush years.
Before
Well,
the
before
Bush
the
years, the
Bush years, we had
EPA.
Love Canal. We had all those things before the Bush years. Um,
We also had that you could drink water out of a faucet in West Texas too, before the Bush years. What has occurred since the
well,
Bush
people.
ideology has come in is that there have been a Congress that has taken pains to defang all of government regulations that are detrimental towards big interests, like the oil companies.
Right. Well, you've you can always drink water, bottled water, because they come from private
Okay,
firms.
so don't worry, just drink bottled
Private firms create bring water to you, and they are very much hurt if you are poisoned. If you
Jeff, rather than crippling the EPA, shouldn't we be strengthening them so they can do their job? Shouldn't we having oversight with the EPA so we
so they
make
can hire.
sure?
No, I would not
No.
say that that's no. Well, they can't. Government is not. It's not a It's not a customer focused business. They take money from their customers by force. They imprison them if they don't
You're
pay.
absolutely right, Jeff.
If they
Government
don't,
is not a
if
business.
no, it's not a business, and if you don't pay them, you get thrown in jail. And if they do a terrible job, all you can do is complain about it, as we are now. Whereas if Coke, Dasani, or any of the bottled water companies, if they poison you, you will stop using them. That would be detrimental. That would be devastating to their business if anybody died as a result of
Okay.
it, and you would and they would go out of business, if
Thank you,
not
Jeff.
go into prison.
Thank you. Let me ask you, Pyong. Is that what the problem is, that government isn't a business? Shouldn't they just turn themselves into like a corporation? Pyong? He's probably playing.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was muted there. No, that's no, no. I don't think. No, of course not. I mean, essentially, from my view, a business entity is a particular form that is taken on for tax treatment, which is subject to the government and the business entities themselves. The
Yeah.
entity is granted by the government. So
I'm
of course
against
not.
corporation formation, by the way. I mean,
Communist bastard. Is there
no,
nothing that
no,
you
no.
don't
That's not
hate,
communist.
Hitler?
No, it's not. A corporation is a legal fiction that exempts its holders against liability or anything like that. I'm totally against that.
A
Yeah,
corporation is a.
in some cases it does.
It's a limited liability entity, and it protects the office holders against. So like when BP polluted the Gulf of
Yeah.
Mexico, nobody went to none of the corporate officers lost their homes or anything like that. I'm totally against that. You should not be you should be liable as an individual, whether or not you're a part of a contractual firm or anything like that.
Well, I mean, I think that that is that's a good point from an ethical standpoint. I would point out though that typically this isn't the case with LLCs, but with corporations, they're usually designed so that it is more beneficial to maintain the assets within the company or within the business entity.
Yeah,
So they'll
it's
clean the whole thing
utilitarian.
out.
It's just like should this company be allowed to pollute?
Oh,
Uh,
you lying bastard!
yeah,
Why do you hate
it's
the
the
people in
same.
Africa, Jeff? Why
I,
do you want to kill the planet, Jeff?
no, I'm saying that the judges actually favored pollution because it was on utilitarian grounds. That's
Well, but in answer to Bunto's question, should the government become a company? No, no, certainly not. No,
well,
Isn't that the
it's not
best
a
way to
company.
look out for our interests?
It's like should the mafia
no.
become a company? They're not. They're an agent of force. That's what they do. If they dropped the force and they were a company, then they wouldn't be the government. So
My problem with this regime that Jeff's talking about, well, I have many problems with it, but there must be something that is in control and enforcing things. And Jeff seems to his stop is the courts. Strong property rights and the courts. And I think that the
private courts, I think, would be way more.
Private
Privatized
courts.
Absolutely.
You didn't know that, Pyong.
Private dispute resolution would be. Yeah.
Now
because-
let him laugh. Let him finish laughing, and then he'll sink in.
Yeah,
Privatized.
most people laugh. Yeah, there's no God. Ha ha.
Hey, speed round here, Jeff. Raw milk, yes or no?
For me personally, should it be legal? Yes, absolutely.
Beer or wine, Jeff?
I prefer wine, but it's just a personal taste.
Tranny or tranny?
Oh, cruel. All right.
What's
No.
that? Tranny or what?
Let's get back on track with
I was just fucking around.
oversight and how one would arrive at justice within the libertarian system would be privatized justice.
Right. Well, there's always got to be some kind of regulator. Okay. And I think that in Jeff's in a lot of what Jeff says, it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's just changing the beneficiary. That's ultimately what I'm thinking of.
Well, hopefully, I would. In a market, typically the beneficiary is the consumer, which I don't think is the case in the current state of affairs. So we have this overarching authority, yet we have wars in multiple countries going on right now that are hardly defensive. I don't think anybody really seriously with a straight face makes that argument that they're that attacking Libya and all these places is defensive. We have military and over almost 700 bases throughout the world that aren't in the U.S. We have police who are armed in ninja gear and are tasering people. There are actually 40,000 SWAT raids a year, which means that there's one about every 10 minutes in the U.S. where somebody bashes a door down, goes into some place, maybe shoots their dog, might be a fatality even if it's the wrong address and somebody isn't immune from an adrenaline attack from somebody crashing into their house.
But
so
the
we
question is, Jeff,
utterly live in a police state. So to say that the current state of affairs, where we have this overarching supposedly authority that says, oh, this should be okay or not, that this is in any way satisfactory, I think is to really live in a cloud right now.
we live in a police state.
The
The majority of people think they live in a...
Well, I mean, what do you think? If a SWAT raid every 10 minutes in the U.S.? Really?
Well,
my neighborhood.
I know, it's been a while.
Oh, yes, my neighborhood is fine, yes.
I've never
Okay.
seen a fucking SWAT raid, Jeff.
Well,
One every 10 minutes, you
well-
figured I'd get one.
hence elitism. Yeah, well, you're due for one.
Elitism.
You're way overdue for one. But
Okay, Jeff, I want you to just tell me the majority of Americans, they believe we're living in a police state.
I don't know. Probably
you're
not. But consider this also. So the U.S. has close to 25% of the world's prisoners are in U.S. prisons. The U.S. has about 5% of the world's population.
The people are just ignorant that they don't know they're living in a police state, right?
Well, there's the old fable: if you want to take someone's rights away, it's like you have to know how to boil a frog. So this isn't exactly true, but if you put a frog in boiling water, he'll jump right out.
Right.
But if you
Turned up slowly.
turn up the temperature slowly, he'll eventually, before he knows it, he'll cook to death. That's kind of like the way it's going in the U.S. So it's a continuum problem. So no, there wasn't like, on Tuesday, November 2nd, 1988, we became a police state. But by ratcheting these things up, we now have a president who claims the authority to assassinate a U.S. citizen anywhere in the world. Unconstitutional is all heck. Forget about that. This is what happened. He assassinated al-Maliki in Yemen and his son. So we
let me
have
ask you this.
we are in my view in a police state. And
Okay, Jeff.
I think
I walk down the street, exercise.
No, I don't care about
I'm
you walking
looking
down the
at a
street. I really
police
don't.
state.
No. It doesn't matter about you walking down the street. It's not so much even about what actually happens, even though there's a lot of actual things that are happening, but it's what are the perceived limits of those in power. And when you have a president who doesn't feel like he's limited, that he can actually order an assassination,
Right.
or you have a cop that thinks he can taser people at will, whether or not he actually does it is secondary. But we are at a point in history in the U.S. where those who are in power feel as if they have very few limitations, if any, and that is a police state.
All right. Those in power tend to want to keep themselves in power.
I would assume so, yes.
Why do we have
Tend to
elections?
roll.
Why do we still have elections, Jeff?
Well, if we had, if they met, well, like Emma Goldman said, if they changed anything, they'd be illegal. So there is a somewhat still a tacit need for those in power to feel as if they have some legitimacy. So back in the days when religious, like you had the pharaohs, there was the pharaohs were actually considered divine, hence the pyramids and all of that. And then we had the divine right of kings. So there's always been this tacit stamp of legitimacy that regimes need, and I do agree they still are somewhat beholden to them. To that, though, that is eroding. So the elections. That's why that's why people say, "Oh, I don't care who you vote for, but just get out to vote." Well, guess what? That is giving legitimacy to these regimes, and that's why they do need some degree of legitimacy to do that, because there are fewer of them than there are of common people who aren't part of the regime. So there is that, but it's ceremonial.
Okay.
It's.
We live in a police state, Jeff. Would you support people rebelling against it?
Not violently, no.
Not violently.
No.
Why not?
I just don't think violence is the answer to any problem.
How else do you rebel against a police state?
Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi.
Yeah, be the change. Don't use force yourself. Don't support it. Don't pay lip service. Don't say, "Oh, the EPA would be great," even if just only the right people got in there.
So Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi, correct, Jeff?
Yeah, those are good examples. Yes, peaceful.
So you do support the equal rights movement, civil rights movement.
I support people being equal in terms of treatment of law and everything. I don't support mandatory. I do support freedom of association, so I don't necessarily think the equal rights. Certainly, the Equal Rights Amendment was right about voting if people want to do that. But as far as saying, who should be hired or who
should be served.
Yeah, I think that violates everybody's rights. I don't think black people should have to sell their stuff or employ people in the Ku Klux Klan if they don't want to, and I think people should be free to associate, but that's not racist. That's just equal rights for everybody.
What if a white person just, if I'm a white person and I'm like, I just don't want black people in here. You think that's okay? I don't have to serve them then?
Do I think it's personally okay? No, I think that's pretty bigoted and narrow-minded, but I wouldn't make it illegal. And you would actually, in reality, you would pay a consequence for that if you had let's say you had a store or whatever, and you decided you only wanted to hire white people and you didn't want to deal with black people, you would be depriving yourself from the productive people in those other communities. So you would pay a penalty for doing that. But I would still say that.
I mean, that might sound okay on paper, but think about the Chick-fil-A situation. Chick-fil-A said, what did they say? No gay people or something?
Yeah, they
didn't say they wouldn't serve
gay.
Right. Well, they paid a price for that.
Well,
a lot of gay people.
They sort of paid a price, but they certainly also gained a tremendous amount of juice in the conservative community, where people were saying, "Oh yeah, fuck them gays. I'm gonna go get me Chick-fil-A." You know what I mean?
Right. Well, you know
Um,
what strikes me about that, Pyong, is like, Jeff, wouldn't they have to make a machine that can detect the difference between
Oh yeah,
money
I mean you
handled
can't.
by a black man and
No,
money
I'm
handled
not
by
defending. Yeah,
a Native American and money handled by an Asian? I mean,
I
just
mean
for the
I think
benefit of the business owner to discern where that money came from?
absolutely. Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can tell if somebody's black, but you can't really tell by looking at most people if they're gay or not. So yeah, it's stupid. I wouldn't defend that at all, but I wouldn't make that. I wouldn't use force. Um, Government is force. I would not use force against Chick-fil-A to tell them that they should only make smart business decisions or only enlightened decisions. It's their. It's on them, and if they don't want to serve certain people. I wouldn't if I've never been to Chick-fil-A in my life, and that made me less inclined to go there. But that's beside the point. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't legally, you know, uh,
Punish them
I wouldn't legally punish them. No,
or force them.
I think
guess is
it's
better.
I think it's really stupid and ignorant. But I wouldn't.
So, okay,
That's my yeah.
just to dovetail it back, we're in a police state. We prefer to use nonviolent, libertarian methods to, change the system, change the regime. Like the guy who can walk with his machine gun at the political rally, gun rights, expand them, right?
Yeah, I would say open carry is not.
Open carry, a guy walking with his machine gun at a political rally is, in line with libertarian values.
Um, yeah, sure.
Damn, Jeff.
I've been to I spent a week in New Hampshire where people were open carrying at an event that I went to. It seems really shocking because most places have gun control, but I noticed it at first because I hadn't I'm not used to it either, living in a state that is for gun prohibition. But I after an hour or so, I didn't even notice it anymore.
Did you guys
But
feel anything?
It's non-violent, so the guns were unloaded, right, Jeff? They didn't have any bullets in the guns, right?
I've no
Non-violent.
idea. I don't know whether they were loaded or not.
Did anybody get really drunk? Were you afraid? Were you like, "Oh shit, the cat"?
I got really drunk.
Freedom.
Right.
Other people did too, I'm sure, and there were no guns blazing or anything like that. No, there was no gunfire. And I've been going to that for. I went to that twice, but I'm aware that there's never been any shots fired or any injuries. It's been going on about that particular event, but New Hampshire has it was the Porcupine Freedom Festival. New Hampshire has open carry permissions, and people do it all the time. People open carry, and it's not a thing.
God bless America.
No, just
Welcome.
yeah.
Welcome, kids. Thanks for coming into the Hangout.
Hmm.
Kids, are you there? Had a drink two nights ago. I was inside. Okay, Shamos, you're there, correct? What do you think about our police state we live in?
Oh, no comment. I don't know. It's not for me. I'm I'm in a good mood tonight. I think that I don't really care. I'm just kind of waiting for World War III and the end times to pop off.
Oh fuck yeah, baby!
That puts it into perspective. Well, I mean, I don't like to dwell on it either. I'm not like a really negative person, so but I do think it's cause for alarm, and I don't think it's.
Well,
Real-
it was news to me. I didn't know we lived in a police state.
No, I
I would
what.
call it that. Maybe you wouldn't, but I think there's a good reason to call it that.
I wouldn't talk in, Jeff used a lot of, I wouldn't say absolutist language, but he talked in very concrete terms. I would agree with a lot of stuff that Jeff said. I mean, our civil rights are being eroded, and they're being eroded consistently. There are changes in police training that are occurring, where policemen are now kind of trained in a way that, hey, your safety is paramount, and you need to survive this engagement no matter what. Not good. That's not good training, and they're not all trained that way. But there is that kind of
officer safety, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And really, if you look at the most every month or so, they'll publish the most dangerous jobs in the U.S. The police and fire are never on the top 10 of those lists. It's always deep sea fishermen and pole people. Actually, the guy who picks up your garbage man picks up your trash is a far greater risk of being killed on the job than a cop. People who do ice water fishing, not ice water fishing, the northern Alaskan fishing that you see on TV shows, truck drivers, traveling salesmen, all have far riskier jobs as far as on-the-job killings than the cops.
Well,
officer safety is paramount, and they've used that to kill people, or as a defense for having killed people.
Well, I mean, they're not all bad, and you have to pick a team, okay? And I'm definitely a law and order guy. I'm on the cops team. I have to be. What's
okay?
Well, as far as the not all bad thing, here's something I think you have to realize. There's something called the thin blue line. So yes, not all the cops that are probably doing the really bad stuff, they're probably a minority. But then there's this ethos about the thin blue line where you don't say anything. So it's probably pretty safe to know that the so-called good cops know who the bad cops are, know that they're brutalizing people, victimizing people regularly, and aren't saying anything. So,
well, but that's a generalization, though. And the reason I say, wait, hold on. There was an article in my local paper just today about this cop that they arrested who was selling ecstasy, making bombs in his apartment. Right. And he was trying to figure out how to manufacture steroids. But they arrested him.
But look how extreme that was. I mean, that's
but
yes. If it's that extreme, they do tend to sometimes get arrested. But there's a lot between that. And
have you ever seen The Wire? Yeah. It works like that. But when your partner pistol whips a guy in your presence, of course he attacked your partner.
Right.
You know how it goes.
And that's
but isn't The Wire a fictional show?
No, it is, but it's very accurate and real.
Oh, I see. But much like the Bible.
Well, how about this?
No, but we know that stuff happens. We don't have to watch. The Wire dramatizes it, to be sure, and probably in a more even-handed way than most cop shows. But even so, we know that we've read about those things. The Wire just dramatizes them.
Well, again, it's a generalization. I've got a specific example for you that's against your generalization. Ultimately, I do agree with what you're saying, Jeff, though. But I have personally been treated very well by cops. I've also been hassled by cops. Don't get me wrong. But as far as all of them being bad, no, I don't think so. Or all good cops protecting bad cops, I don't think so.
I'm a white middle-aged guy, so when I get pulled over, I'm usually let go. That's not the point. Yes, I've been treated courteously, although I've been pulled over for pretty stupid reasons. But no, but that's not the. That's not the story. It's the people.
Pretty sure Pyong looks like Alex Trebek, so he doesn't have any of those problems either.
Driving while black.
No, I just clearly said that I've been hassled by cops and I've been treated fine. It depends on the cop. See, you can't make these bizarre generalizations and expect me to just go along with it.
Well, I mean, it sounds like
I don't need to make generalizations. Read Cop Watch, Cop Block. Read read any place that reports on these infractions that happen daily. No, they don't happen to me, but that doesn't mean.
Well, that kind of goes against what you're saying about a police state, doesn't it? I think you're getting lost here because I said that I agreed with you fundamentally, and now you're saying that you never get hassled by the cops, but we live in a police state. I'm not sure where you're at.
Well, I mean, he was just starting to say that driving while black. ends up. He was going to say something about that, and then I know several black people who get hassled all the time, all the time. It's hard for them to not get hassled. They end up being pretty scared of the police because of the way they get treated so often.
Yeah, and I would even guess, despite your good experiences, that generally if you see a cop behind you in the mirror, you don't get a warm fuzzy feeling. You don't think, oh, this is good. I'm glad that person's protecting me now. We know that cops are probably going to escalate something, and they're not there. I mean, if there's any reason why they can get an arrest out of you or something like that, and once you pull over and you're not drunk or you're not this or that, yes, they will let you go, and they'll be pretty professional about doing so.
Do you sort of see where Pyong's coming from as far as, like, you say we live in a police state, and now you're coming back with the, you looking in the rearview mirror.
So if I'm not in jail right now, I can't say we
you're
live
not
in
in
a police
jail.
state.
You said the cop let you go.
Well, that's evidence that we live in a police state. That's a pretty low bar. Yeah.
No, I wanted to ask Pyong a specific question. Okay, you are agreeing with Jeff Keller that we are living in a police state.
Well, but
that our civil rights have been eroded, correct?
Right. I wouldn't say
Jeff has
police.
His particular remedy for the police state is that we have non-violent libertarian recourse of walking around with our machine guns at public rally, with ammo loaded or not, correct? What is your answer to our police state?
That's a really stupid characterization of that.
How is that? You said that to expand gun rights.
I was talking with Bunto the other day, and he said, "What is begging the question?"
Oh, now he's gonna.
No, but I mean,
so tell me, Eric, what is your answer?
Way to ask a question. I said I condone walking around in a park with. That doesn't mean I said it was the solution to something. I just said I condone that, and that has certain.
Jeff, please, I was asking Sean for the solution. What is the solution?
Well, stop asking the stupid loaded questions.
Sorry that I hurt your feelings with a simple question, Jeff.
I hate to agree with what Jeff's saying, but that was pretty loaded. So.
Well, I'm sorry, but I just asked. I wasn't even asking Jeff the question. I was
but you cited me, so I feel. Oh, Jeff thinks the solution to the police state is to walk around a park with a loaded machine gun. Come on.
I didn't know if it was loaded, with ammunition or no.
You said loaded. Oh, okay, unloaded. Okay.
So please, John, what is your alternative solution, please?
Loaded questions for loaded machine guns. Right?
Poisoning the well.
Oh, goddamn. No, man. No, I wouldn't characterize it as a police state, but it's getting more dangerous, that's for sure. But the thing about walking around with machine guns and stuff, also, that's an exercise in futility. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to go up against an Apache helicopter with your hunting rifle or your Ruger Mini 14 or something.
Do it in Iraq all the time.
Well, I was just going to say, a lot of people who poo-poo gun rights haven't looked at Iraq or Afghanistan, where the world's greatest military supposedly has been there for like 14 years and can't make a bit of headway because of locally armed people.
They can have guns.
But see, that's the thing, Jeff. See, they don't. One of the reasons that they can't engage in or couldn't engage in combat, for example, in Afghanistan, is they had to catch you with the gun. If you've got a gun and you think you're going up against an Apache, you're out of your fucking mind, dude. As soon as that's the reason they couldn't engage in Afghanistan, because they didn't have guns. You see what I'm saying?
Well, and they couldn't. The Apaches don't know who the good guys or the bad guys are either, which is another.
But I'm talking about rules of engagement. Okay, when you're saying that these guys are going up against longbows or even our Marines or recon, they're not, because if they had a weapon, they'd be dead.
So should people be?
But they can't have a political victory. They can't subjugate these people.
Not the point. I said walking around with even a relatively militaristic contemporary firearm is nothing against military hardware.
Should people be able to walk around a rally or something like that with bombs blatantly strapped to themselves?
Yes. What about that?
No, you can't put other people in harm's way.
Why is that any different than carrying another firearm? That could hurt somebody too. What's the difference?
Well, a bomb is a potentially explosive thing that can hurt a lot of people, not just and not just defensively. So
A machine gun can't hurt a bunch of people.
You'd have to deliberately fire a machine gun to hurt a bunch of people. It's not like a bomb. A bomb really does shoot people indiscriminately. That's not to say that you should be held accountable if you have a machine gun and you shoot a lot of people. That's a terrible thing. But the cops have automatic weapons too, so.
If they had bombs in the Second Amendment, then yeah, we could walk around with bombs, correct? You know.
Well, the Second Amendment says arms, and it talks about defense. So
a bomb, I guess, could
armed with bombs isn't armed. That's not armed.
Go ahead.
Well,
Jeff.
no, a bomb is something that puts a lot of people. It's a very high risk thing that puts a lot of people in harm's way, and no, it would be an act of aggression to have a bomb or an open container of anthrax or anything that would indiscriminately kill people and would not be used for defensive purposes. That's a different matter.
We use bombs for defensive purposes. Mines.
No, they kill a lot of innocent people unjustly, in my view. Landmines are a terrible thing. They kill even after the war is over.
Well,
okay. How about bazookas?
How about
bazookas? How about a bazooka? Should be able to walk around with a bazooka?
Rocket launcher.
I don't know how practical it would be. Like a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything.
Home defense.
Russia makes them pretty compact these days, actually.
Yeah, just having the means to defend yourself. I mean, I don't know. We could haggle over which would be defensive and which would be a threat to other people just by virtue of its existence, like nuclear stuff or whatever. That's reckless. That could be reckless endangerment. I don't really have a particular line. But I wouldn't rule out any particular.
Well, your particular line was non-violent.
That you don't want bombs, so then because it can harm
a weapon of mass or
you're basing that on being able to harm people, but you're saying a bazooka and a rocket launcher is okay.
Where's the
line?
The principle would be anything that would kill indiscriminately or is high risk of accidental deployment or whatever. That would be, I would think that would be
rocket launchers then. So you're against rocket launchers then?
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
Okay. So you changed. Okay.
Yeah.
But in order to,
I would say if somebody was walking around with a rocket launcher on my property, I should.
On your property. Well, how about political rally?
Or at a political. Well, that would be. Again, I'm a private property fan, so I think the best way to. So yeah, if you had a rocket launcher on my property, I would tell you to leave.
Now, Jeff, you said specifically nonviolent methods in order to combat our police state.
Yeah.
All right. What's the most nonviolent rocket launcher you know of?
Well,
what's the most nonviolent machine gun you know of?
I'm not including self-defense necessarily, so I'm saying one should not initiate violence. But once violence is initiated, you are within your rights.
Jeff, has violence been initiated?
Well, in what case?
Our police state. Has our police state initiated violence on us?
No. Well, there's rape and robbery, but have I been raped or robbed? No. So if I were being robbed or whatever, then violence has been initiated against me, and if so, then I should be. Then I'm fully within my rights to use violence to diffuse that situation. That doesn't mean, like, if you rob me, I have a right to to bomb the village that you live in or anything like that, but I have a right to proportionally defend myself against your attack.
Good enough. Eric, are you still there?
Buddy, yeah, what's going on? Yep.
I didn't catch your answer, your alternative to the nonviolent libertarian ways of battling our police state. What were they?
My alternative to the nonviolent libertarian what?
Ways of rebelling against our police state.
Well, I don't think that it's that bad that we have to use nonviolent methods right now. I think that it's still well within our realistic potential to change it just by modifying policies. You know, there's a lot of movement going on right now because of the Ferguson situation, and then that gentleman who was unfortunately choked out
New York.
in New York, yeah, which I thought was egregious, which I absolutely
yeah, it was
thought
horrible.
egregious.
We actually, I'm sorry, like
Go ahead.
right where I live in this little podunk town that I live in, actually, there were off-duty cops who were called upon to address a situation in a movie theater. They were rent-a-cops, so they were off-duty. So they went to there was this guy who was severely retarded and who wanted to watch a second showing of a film and wasn't leaving, and they called the cops, these rent-a-cops, to come in, and the same thing happened to him. He was obese. They put him on the floor, and he was gasping, and he suffocated, and he died. So it's not just a racial thing. That's one of the things that gets me a little frustrated about this, is that they have, some of these have a racial component, but this stuff happens every day to people of all walks of life.
People notice the racial component.
Yeah, it's not like
Kid.
it's like otherwise it doesn't seem important, and that's really frustrating. But
Kids.
this, go ahead.
Let me ask you something. Eric said that he would rather take the traditional methods of U-turning the trajectory that our government's going in, our police state government. Do you have any other alternatives, or which would you prefer, the libertarian nonviolent method or going with the system that we have?
As far as how things are going, what are you meaning when you say how things are going?
Well, Jeff indicated that our system right now resembles a police state. So how can we reverse it and come back to democracy? What methods do we have?
Well, more voting by the people instead of by representatives, possibly.
So you believe the traditional democratic methods are still our best option, instead of I
think it's something we should shoot for first, and if that still doesn't work, no matter how hard we try, then we'll have to do some other method.
Violent methods?
Well, nonviolent would be preferred first, but if it has to come to violence, then that's what it has to come to.
Yeah, and I really don't strongly oppose people trying to work within the system. I personally just don't find it that effective. I mean, I supported Ron Paul, who I think works within the system on a lot of these fronts, and I'm not at all against that. Really, it's just not my cup of tea.
Very good. Seamus, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Would you say that the best solution against our police state is a theocracy?
No, but what I wanted to say is, back in my pre-Christian days, I definitely would not have been opposed to like a kind of like an armed insurrection. I mean, I always kind of thought, no, seriously, because I always thought back then, like, because right after 9/11 and stuff, I kind of try to put myself in their shoes. Like, what if there was another country, like, imposing its will on the United States, and they were drone striking our shit, and just, I mean, back then, before I was a Christian, I could not logically see myself doing anything different than those people over there.
But now you've seen the light, huh?
Well, now,
Yeah,
I just
why do you feel differently now? I mean,
I can't perpetrate violence. I just can't do it.
oh, okay. But
so wouldn't a theocracy be the best remedy against the police state, Seamus?
I don't know about that.
It'd have to be, 'cause if everybody sees the light like you do, there's no violence anymore.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
a theocracy does not guarantee that everyone believes the same. It's just making the government based on a religion. So that answer doesn't make sense.
yeah, and actually,
Ooh, good point. Good
Actually,
point.
a lot of the colonies in the U.S. were religious factions, and they understood that if that they had escaped a place where there was a national religion and a theocracy of a sort, and they understood that if you have that, then it's winner take all, and whoever gets the in power. That's why the Quakers were in Pennsylvania and the
Yeah,
Catholics.
Jeff, but I know you'd even accept a libertarian theocracy.
I'll put it this way.
What the fuck?
What?
What does that mean? That
You're
doesn't
not,
make any
would
sense.
you not
That's not
accept
even.
a libertarian
That's not even
theocracy?
a. That concept doesn't make sense.
Jeff,
Yeah.
there could be a libertarian theocracy, can there not
No.
be?
Are you
Jeff.
have you heard anything I've said?
Jeff, I can't believe that libertarians. Okay, so libertarianism can't lend itself to a theocracy.
No.
No, I mean if under a libertarian society, if you were a fundamentalist, whatever, you could have a piece of land and you could have people on your land and you could have a commune or whatever you wanted to have, as long as it's peaceful and voluntary. That's all libertarianism says. But no, nobody
Can you
nobody
see
can
how-
control nobody can control the peaceful activities of other people. We're not for libertarians are for a very minimal state at most, but
Right.
many for no state at all. So
Well,
a
I mean,
theocracy would be,
It puts personal liberty above literally everything else, above
Yeah.
all else,
in
above
the
above
political
ethics,
sense. That
above
doesn't mean
ethics,
you can't
above-
have
above
right.
ethics or morals or anything. It
Well-
puts personal liberty
Well,
above
it's-
everything.
It's a political philosophy, so it doesn't mean that you can't be part of a religion or live in a commune or do anything you want to. It's just really a statement about whether, to what extent you can use force or fraud against other people. And what the libertarians say, anything that's peaceful goes. You only get to use force if it's in defense. So no, so a theocracy or any kind of government that would regulate anything other than your ability to be.
But you realize, Jeff, that's a
Anything but defend your
weakness of
rights.
libertarianism. That's a weakness of
That's
libertarianism.
that we don't promote theocracy.
No, that it cannot be compatible with theocracies. Take a state
I
like
just don't
Iran.
No, no. Well,
how is that
why
a
would we want to be?
weakness?
Why would we want to be compatible with a theocracy?
No, but I mean, okay, it is the freedom philosophy.
No,
Not
actually,
libertarian.
no. Let me just correct you there, because under libertarianism, unlike any other political philosophy of which I'm aware, you can have a commune that is Jim Jones, that is Baptist, that is Islam, that's anything you want, as long as the people that are in it are there by choice. But you can have whatever you want. Libertarian is leave us alone. If we're peaceful,
Okay.
you can do that. If that's
So
what you
it's-
want. So libertarianism is actually compatible with any lifestyle. It only says that it's about consent. It's voluntary. Otherwise, keep your paws off.
The main problem with libertarianism is the fact that there's no way to convert to it without causing either just total destruction of our current government and massive hardship and suffering. There's no way to convert to it. There's no way to transition to it. You have to destroy what we have in order to have libertarianism.
Well,
That's the problem.
I would argue that the current system is mathematically unsustainable, and that there is going to be, at the current rate, I'm not hoping for this, but I don't see any reversal. This system is doomed to bankruptcy, so there's going to be a really rough, nasty transition to something, and I would much prefer that it be to libertarianism than to fascism or communism or something else. So yes, it's like being on heroin for a long time. If you're used to public assistance and the bounty of the government, and you've adapted to that, yeah, that is a tough transition. And people like Ron Paul have said, well, let's end the wars first, and let's do it this way or that way. Yeah, it is a tough. It's like quitting drinking or any other bad habit. Quitting government is going to cause some withdrawal symptoms. So I don't disagree with that. Although I don't think it's in the case of the state, This can't go on. I mean,
Well, I mean, we could go to a cross between capitalism and a sort of socialism, a kind of a hybrid between the two.
That's kind of what we have now. We have sort of a cross between. We have a mixed economy. It has socialistic aspects. It's mostly corporatist or fascist, insofar as
just if we can get rid of the corporatism and make it more of just a regular cross between capitalism and socialism, but we keep the capitalism. We don't
well,
go
that would
fully
be an
socialist.
improvement.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, we could do something like that and still last and still keep the government we have and not have all the suffering.
Right, but the incentive structure for that to happen is not good. The incentive seems to be for people to take what they can while they can, and I actually think there's a sense right now that this isn't going to last, and that the people who are invested, the people in the military-industrial complex, the people in the banking complex, all the things that are closely wedded to government, I think they're trying to get what they can while the getting is good, because I don't see this lasting forever.
Let me ask you this, Kiz.
And I think it's going to be painful either way.
Let me ask you this, Kiz. If you found the majority of your political viewpoints being mirrored in the Tea Party, would you join it?
There's no way that my points would be mirrored in the Tea Party. The Tea Party
aligned with the Tea Party.
The Tea Party is so against taxes, and especially high taxes. They're so against the idea of helping people against the will of the people that they're taxing. They're everything. Anytime that we want to help people, the Tea Party thinks that it should be on their own accord, that it shouldn't be the government. The Tea Party very much aligns a lot with some libertarian philosophies, so I don't see my view of
I will tell you,
going into that.
As a libertarian, I was pretty excited about the Tea Party when it first came out, because it was initially, to my understanding, it was kind of started by Ron Paul and the Ron Paul Revolution, which was mostly libertarian. However, after going to the first Tea Party event, my hopes were quickly dashed. It was pretty much establishment conservatives immediately hijacked the movement. The particular one that I went to my town, there were nothing but right-wing politicians and radio show hosts. So it wasn't. There were a few libertarians there, but that was the first and last Tea Party thing that I ever went to. And I think it was also very pro-war, very anti-immigration, and it just was a big nothing. But as far as libertarians are not any more or less compassionate than anyone else. They just don't think that the state should be involved in charity, that it should be a private thing. If people who say they're so for charity and want the government to do this and that, well, if they don't do that themselves, then they're full of shit. Why should we listen to them anyway? But if they're not full of shit, if they have more money or they have less money taken from them, then they will be able to do all these charitable things that they want to do, as I will be able to do, and as actually people do, even in light of how much government welfareism there is. So it's not about I don't want the government to make shoes, but that doesn't mean I'm against people having shoes or anything like that. It's the same thing with charity, and that's kind of
the thing is
that's a red.
Most people aren't very charitable, though. Most
people aren't
really charitable.
No, there's
a percentage, like there's religious people that will use their religion in it. They'll do the charity based on the religion, but that's normally it.
Well,
that's normally where it ends.
Well,
for the most part,
actually,
not always, but I mean, if we have the government forcing it, then it forces everyone to be charitable.
The U.S., even to the extent that the government is so involved in welfare and stuff, is still one of the most charitable places in the world. If you want charity, you want prosperity, and most of the really large philanthropic institutions in the U.S. began in the progressive era, before the welfare state in the
Does not the
19th.
government give substantial tax breaks to those who do give charitably? They're called tax shelters.
Well, they're not really tax. You have to spend it. This whole thing about a tax shelter, you have to spend it to get it back. So yes, there are incentives in the tax structure, but people in the U.S. are still extraordinarily charitable, even in hard times, even in light of the welfare
Because
state.
of the government tax system.
Well, you know, I'd
No,
like to make a,
despite it, the government takes a lot more money. I mean, people could just spend the money if the government didn't tax them for it. When you get a deduction, it doesn't mean you didn't spend the money. It just means the government didn't tax it, so you get more. Your charity dollars go farther if they're not taxed, which is a good thing. But it doesn't mean you're not spending the money. It just means you're not giving it to you're giving it to a much more worthy cause than the government if you give it to a private charity.
And hence they get a tax break. Go ahead, Pyong, please.
But that's not.
well, I just wanted to. Hold on, Jeff. Hold on, buddy. Hold on.
A tax break
We'll
is
go,
not a
Jeff,
gift.
hold on, buddy.
break
Hold
is-
on. Whoa, there. Hey,
Just
Captain Curry.
one
Just
real
wait a
quick-
minute. Hold on.
No,
Hold on, Jeff. Whoa, Nelly. Listen,
I said
the
this
only
would be very.
thing I wanted. Jesus fucking
Don't be
Christ.
such a douche,
The
man.
only-
I just had one sentence.
Jesus,
Jeff, please.
dude, you've been talking for 15 fucking minutes, Jeff. Slow your goddamn roll.
I was not talking.
Listen, the only the only thing I wanted to say.
One last thing to say. One
Oh
quick.
Jesus! Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Of course.
I just wanted to say that when the government, when you get a quote tax break, the government is not giving you something; they are taking less of your money. That's all I wanted to say.
You just said that.
I did not just say that.
Yes, you did.
You did actually, but
You just
said-
fucking. Is that why you were?
said it in two different
What the fuck, Jeff?
No, I didn't say that exactly.
Come on.
Dude, I'm turning in my Jeff Keller Mellon fan club pin. That's it.
Well, if I say I'm about done, I'm about done. So, go ahead.
Pyong,
Yo, what's happening?
you were going to elucidate on my.
Oh no, I just wanted to say the term tax shelter is slightly anachronistic.
Okay.
I do agree a lot with what Jeff said actually, but however, in my own personal experience, which is limited with regard to charitable giving, it has, like you said, always been how can we make this mechanically work within the tax structure. So. Yeah, I think that if there wasn't a tax break for it, there would be much less of it.
Do you agree, Jeff?
I'm sorry. Rephrase that. You said if there was less what?
Pyong. You said,
I said in my own limited experience in dealing with business entities.
Oh, if there wasn't a deduction, there would be less of it. Yeah, I think
Right.
that's probably true.
Right. Yeah, that's non-controversial.
okay. Kiz, what do you think that the government should get out of the business of what do you say, incentivizing the citizens' altruism? That they should.
I think it's a good idea for the government to give tax breaks for people who give more to charity. I think that's a good idea. I think those incentives are a good thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I would just add to that in general, I think it's a bad idea. I think one of the bad things about the tax code is that it's used for social engineering. In that sense, I hate to haggle over who should get a tax break and who shouldn't, but to the extent that people are getting tax breaks in providing charity, actually, I'm fine with anybody getting a tax break for any reason.
fine.
But I think it does have some positive social benefits. as
Well,
well.
what's
Are you
wrong?
against-
Go ahead, Kiz.
Are you against all social engineering?
Yes, I am. Like through the tax code or through force. That's basically through force. Yes, I am.
Kiz. I was gonna say the problem with our government, Jeff, is that it is for being a police state, it does a lot of good in the world. Wouldn't you admit? I mean, it forces our citizens to be more charitable than they would rather. It does a lot of aid to countries, in order to, countries in Africa, in order to help them with their, doctors to Africa to help them with their medical problems. This police state that we live in should know that it's a police state and stop doing all these good things for the betterment of people around the globe.
Well, I wouldn't say that nothing that the government does. Obviously, a lot of things that the government does on the face of it are good things. Like, I think educating people is a good thing.
Foreign aid.
I think charity is a good thing, and the state ostensibly does some of those things. I think when you look at it closely, the state does those things very poorly, or they do it in a political way.
Not as good as a libertarian society, right? If we had that libertarian society.
No, not just the libertarian society, but if you look at the ratio of dollars that actually go to the intended beneficiaries, and through the government. The money that's laundered through the government to so-called help people is very
through the government. Okay.
Yeah, is very small compared to charities where private. If you
Jeff,
donate to
I
a
know
charity,
stories where the
charity
takes about 90%. I was just.
Yeah, that's published, and that usually makes a wave, and people say, well, I don't want to give to that charity anymore. So yeah, but in the government, you're forced to give to that charity regardless. So yes, there's some.
You don't think there's more potential of having a generalized if you average it out, you don't think the government has a potential of being more taking less of the money for the government itself versus actually going to what it's supposed to, versus when they are private and a lot of people want to make money. You don't think when you average it out that the government does a better job?
No, I don't. No. Well, there's no.
Why?
Well, because it's they're politically protected, so they can rationalize. I'm sure they think they're fine bureaucrats and all that stuff, but they're not accountable. They're not held accountable for results. If the so-called donors aren't satisfied with them, they can't divert their funds everywhere else. So no, the incentives. It's not that they're inherently evil, but the incentives just aren't there for them to be efficient and to produce results. I'm sure maybe on some level they want to. I'm not saying they're evil necessarily, or that maybe some of them don't think they ought to be doing right, but the bureaucracy takes on a life of its own, and when it's unaccountable, when they can't go out of business and they can't lose market share or whatever, then it's almost prima facie that they're not going to be as efficient.
The thing is, though, if someone is not in it for the money,
right,
then and there's a chance they might lose money out of it to some degree. How can you say that would be less likely for the money to go where it's supposed to than when you have a private place that can sometimes take 90% of the profit? How can you make that?
I think you're falsely assuming that people who go into government are not self-interested in the same way that they are in the market. So in the marketplace, they're every bit as self-interested. If maybe they are even more self-interested. I don't know, but the point is that they have to compete with other charities, and if it gets published that the United Way, as it did actually a few years ago, I think it was the United Way, it was Goodwill or one of them, where their executives were being driven around in limousines and stuff like that. They took a huge hit. People really stopped giving to them, and they had to mend their ways. And that is much less likely to happen in the political system. In many cases, we see in the political system where if a program is ineffective, they will cry out that they don't have enough funding, and therefore they need more money, more budgets. It works the opposite in the private sphere. So it's almost prima facie on the case of it that a coercive government charity or any kind of activity will be less efficient and less responsive to consumer needs than a private firm where they are the actual stakeholders and they actually stand to lose. It's not just all about good intentions and stuff like that. It's really about profit and loss based on your results.
Or like why, let's say when you're dealing with other things that the government gets involved in, let's say when the government gets involved in utilities versus private industry getting involved in utilities, the government doesn't care if they lose some money. The private industries do care if they lose some money, which it pretty much shows that when it's private, they always charge the customers more.
Well, when there's competition, they are regulated by what the other firms will charge, and we know that in the private sphere, generally, the more private something is, the more the overall tendency is towards downward pricing. If you look at electronics,
what's to guarantee that there's going to be competition? Well, how do you force there to be competition? You can't force there to be competition.
No, you don't force competition. But if you have a product, theoretically, if you had a product and you were the most efficient person at providing that product, and literally nobody could compete with you, then you would have complete market share, and that would not be a problem. That should not be a problem. That's a non-coercive monopoly. That is, everybody would rather deal with you, and nobody else can touch you in terms of goods and services. You should corner the market, as the saying goes. You should have.
But
so rarely happens in the first place. But the best way to guarantee that there will be competition is for you to be inefficient and charge your customers more than they could get the services from somebody else. And that's what firms have to guard themselves against constantly. But if you get an exclusive government franchise, then you don't have to worry about any of that. And that's why those goods and services tend to be subpar. We complain a lot more about our cable company than we do about our Samsung phones or our shoes or whatever, because those things are protected government monopolies, whether or not they're private or not.
Let me give a good example. Here in Tacoma, we have Comcast for cable. Let's say for cable. We have Comcast and we have City Cable.
Okay.
City Cable gives better deals than Comcast. Okay.
Okay.
And then that was the only way that Comcast was going to get competition. That was the only way that was ever going to happen, because you look in other parts of the United States, there is no competition to Comcast. I mean, you have other parts, you do have sections that there is competition, but there's several states, there's several places where you have no competition. There's no way to get competition.
Well, we don't have competition here. We just have Comcast in terms of cable here where I am, and that's not because there's nobody ever wants to compete with them. It's because that it's illegal to compete with Comcast in my area, and I'm opposed to that, and that's not competition. But
illegal to I've never heard of that. I've never heard of it being.
No, there can only well, you're saying there's city. I'm sure in your area that's a government-granted franchise, so your government allows two. Mine happens to only allow one. But in a libertarian world, there would be numerous choices for cable services if people wanted.
I'm just saying I've never heard of the government stopping people from being able to have company to have competition.
You'll find that in my area, Comcast is the only legal provider of cable. You can't compete with them, and I would bet that in your area that it was Comcast and that this other cable company, City, was allowed to come in as a second competitor, but that it's still not legal for anybody to compete with those two.
Legal? It's not an issue of legality. It's an issue of it's not feasible. It's not feasible to compete with them.
Well, because it's illegal. I think you'll find that it's illegal to compete with them.
I'm going to have to look that up because I've never heard of that before, ever.
Okay.
Don't disregard the substantial barrier to entry because they wouldn't be able to use the lines and that sort of thing too, the channels of distribution. They may have to create their own lines of distribution, which would be a substantial barrier to entry. Yeah. But I'm not agreeing with you, Jeff, in this one. I'm agreeing with Kiz on it.
Well, but I think you will find that wherever you are, that the government allows in some areas it allows just one franchise one provider, and then some it allows just two. Now I can use I can go to Dish and stuff like that, but here there's only one allowed cable company, and actually it was another cable company that was bought out by Comcast, and they're very much connected with the government, and you can't compete with them.
Yeah. What we can all agree on is that a libertarian government or the libertarian world will look a lot different than our current system of democracy, right, Jeff?
For sure.
Right.
It will look a lot different.
I would assume so, yes.
Now, Jeff, we give foreign aid to countries.
I don't. But
currently. Okay, yeah, well, please explain to us how come a libertarian country wouldn't.
Well, okay, so you as a
the libertarian society doesn't see any utility in doling out foreign aid, correct?
Right, but you as an individual, if you wanted to send money to the
I was only speaking figuratively.
The government of Uganda, you could do that, but no, there would be no central government, and that would be I think foreign aid is notorious for sending money to dictatorships and propping them up and keeping them in power. They usually buy arms and luxuries and things.
Would we be at a disadvantage against other countries that didn't have the libertarian ideals that that we would have? I mean, countries that did give foreign aid.
Well, it wouldn't be our motive or our interest to intervene in the affairs of those countries, so I would think we would be much better off if we were allowed to keep.
How do you know that?
Rather than throw them into the toilet of.
How do you know it would never be in our interest?
Foreign aid to foreign governments.
How do you know it would never be in our interest to intervene with either aid, with either financial or military?
Well, because if it was in our interest, we would do it voluntarily, individually.
How is that even possible? That's too big of a task to do individually.
I don't know why you would want to do it individually, but you could send them a check. I'm sure they would cash it.
But that's kind of the point of what we're saying.
Why would you want to give money to a foreign government? It would go to it would just go to the ruling regime, and they would use it to keep more of an iron fist on their people. That's notoriously what happens with
centralized
governments. I would hope it would be hard for you to do that because it's a shitty thing to do to people.
Can I make
if you wanted to, you could. I'm sure they would cash your check.
But a large government would have leverage in those areas. Well, we'll give you this money if you do this. Individual people can't do that.
Well,
can I just make a point of order here?
Why do you want to tell them what to do? I mean, why can't we?
Because you don't believe in making the world a better place. Then
I didn't say that. But why would you want to give?
You just kind of did.
I did not kind of do that. If I want to make the world a better place, one thing is to live by example rather than telling other people what to do. So, we're telling France right now about lecturing them about free speech when France actually has terrible free speech laws and all this stuff, and we're telling Iraq what to do. I don't want to bomb those people. I don't want to embolden their dictatorships.
Jeff, do you ever feel you have
the history of? It's been the history of foreign aid has been upholding foreign dictatorships, which have kept an iron fist on people. And if libertarianism makes that impossible, then long live libertarianism.
Oh well, Eric, did you want to add anything or?
Actually, I just wanted to make just a gentlemanly suggestion, a point of order. Jeff he's a stallion. He's a titan. He's been tirelessly fighting for libertarian ideals for over 2 hours. He's glassy-eyed. He's a little punchy.
20 years, actually.
Knuckles are bloody. Foreign intervention is a huge subject. Maybe we could talk about it another time.
What do you think, Jeff?
That's fine.
I think you did very well tonight, Jeff.
Thank you.
You're my hero, sort of.
I hope. I mean, I've had some very negative, almost. I've had some anger towards some people who talk about libertarianism, and I hope I haven't been overly rude or whatever in this discussion. So
Now, and I will tell you, I remember reading Murray Rothbard's book
Oh my
For a New
goodness.
Liberty. I read it like 20 years ago, and when I read it, I was really angry when I read it. But he made a lot of the points that I have tried to make, although probably not as effectively as he did. But I remember being really angry by it as well. But then a strange thing happened. I couldn't unlearn it after I'd heard it, and over I would say a year's time or maybe two, I kind of adopted. I couldn't refute it. I mean, it was dead on. It was saying unpatriotic things, things like that, tackling sacred institutions. But no, I think if you're for peace and for non-intervention, looking at existing institutions to solve those when they've done such an abysmal job is really bad. And and just looking at things like because of what they're called, like the Clean Water Act, and saying, well, you can't be against that, or you're against clean water. That's just how you kind of have to change your thinking if you want to be an independent thinker. You have to look beyond what people's incentives are, their stated motives, and see what actually happens. And so, anyway.
Thank you, Jeff. I'd like to thank all our participants tonight. Aish's Jeff Killer, Kizume Fowler, and yours truly, Kazoom, and of course, Pyongyang. Please stay tuned for our next hangout, which will cover foreign intervention, as well as, I believe, junk science. Have a good night, all. Take care.
Sounds good.